Well, welcome everybody to the November meeting of the Development Control Committee here at the Lake District National Park Authority. I'll start with the usual introductions for those people who may not have been here before and for those people who are viewing us live on YouTube. My name is Mark Kidd, I'm chair of the committee, and sitting to my right is Andrew Smith, who's head of development management, and sitting to Andrew's right is Kevin Richards, who's the planning manager here at the National Park. To my left is Daniel Milliken, who's our legal advisor, and Daniel will be doing the timer for our public speaking today as well. And to Daniel's left is Helen Hooper, who is the Member Services Coordinator, and she'll be taking the minutes for the meeting. And most importantly, I think, to my left and to my right are the members of the committee who will be making the decisions on the planning applications in front of us today. So we have our agenda today. We've got a reasonably long agenda today. So I'll start with item number 1, and that's apologies for those members that can't be here. I'll ask Helen.
We've had apologies from Rick Outhwaite this morning.
Thank you very much, Helen. And members, the next item is for you to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Happy to approve, Mark.
All okay? Okay, I shall sign those. If you give me a second. Thank you very much, members. My next few announcements are, firstly, the fire safety instructions. We're not expecting a fire alarm today, so if you hear something, it does sound like a fire alarm, please treat it as the real thing. And the procedure is to exit the doors to my left here. If the alarm goes off, one of the members will open them, and we all proceed out of the building around a clockwise direction around the building and assemble in the car park out front. But we aren't expecting anything today, so if you do hear something, then it is the thing. Also, I'd like to announce that the meeting is live streamed on YouTube. You can see it on the screen there, and that'll stay on YouTube as a recording of the meeting today. And lastly, if I could ask, if you've got a mobile phone or device, could you turn it on to silent, please? So members, next item, declarations of interest. Do you have any interests that you want to declare for any of the items on the agenda today? No, none? Public participation. So this is for public participation of a general nature. And today we don't have any public questions, petitions or deputations of that general nature. However, we do have public speaking for individual planning applications to come. Next item is site inspections. I'll ask Andrew, have you any site inspections proposed for members?
Yes, we do have one proposed. You'll recall we had an application for a housing development in Ambleside, 40 houses, a mixture of permanent homes, local occupancy and affordable homes. We've now got an application in for an amended scheme. It's retrospective in terms of the levels of some of those buildings. We would like to take you to see that so that you can understand the site. The amenity arrangements of residential amenities are probably the critical thing, really. So seeing that on the ground, we think would be a good idea. So we'd like to take you there. We'd like to take you into some of the neighbours' properties as well. So actually into neighbouring homes, so that you can see the development as well. So just bear that in mind. Logistics wise, you will have to take your shoes off. So just bear that in mind when you're picking your socks.
No.
Do we have a date, proposed date?
Oh, next Wednesday, 10:30.
We can change the time a little bit.
Next Wednesday is a time that is convenient for members.
You can't do it, Doug? No. Can anyone else do it? No. How about we defer that to the end of this meeting and we work out a suitable time? We'll work out between us, because we really do want a good range of members to go along to that site visit. On site visits, members, do you wish to propose any site visits? No? Okay, so we'll get into our planning applications. So normally we take planning applications in the numerical order that they come, but we start with those with public speaking, which just happens in this case that number 1 is the first one we're doing today. So our first planning application to consider is Alloch Moss, Cupboard Field, and land between West of Derwentwater, Borrowdale Valley, Portinscale. And Kevin's going to take us through this one.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everyone. we're reporting this application to you today for a number of different reasons, mainly because of the high level of public interest that there has been in these proposals, both in this application and in previous similar applications on these sites. We're reporting it to you because of the considerable number of representations which there have been, both for and against the proposals, and the number and nature of representations from statutory and non-statutory consultees. There was also a previous committee decision to refuse a similar proposal in December 2021. Committee visited this site in relation to these proposals in February this year. There's one straightforward update to the committee report, and that's to do with our recommendation. On reflection, there should be a reference in the recommendation to policy 09, and that's the local plan policy for the North Distinctive Area. That's a simple addition to the final paragraph of the recommendation, though, as an additional policy reference. Just in terms of the format of my presentation and what I intend to show on the screen, I'm going to show you 3 aerial photographs in a minute and point out various locations in and around the 2 application sites here, or the 2 parts of the application site, just so you can get an idea of how all of this starts to fit together. I'm then going to show you some photos of the parking and access problems in the area which the proposals seek to address. We'll then move on and have a look at the proposals themselves, and I'll then show you some photos of the site as it is currently. And finally, I'll come back and I'll summarise our assessment for you and our recommendation. So there's the site, 2 parts, 2 main parts anyway. A car park at Ullock Moss near the village of Portinscale, and a turning circle for the purposes of pickup and drop off by a shuttle bus to serve that car park. There are proposals for the existing footpath, part of the Cumbria Way, in between the 2 parts of the site, which I'll come back to. So the proposals in detail are for a new 150 space car park, as I say, outside of the village of Portinscale, an amenities building within that car park, providing toilets and space for an office to operate the shuttle bus service, and also for a bike hire business. Proposals are also for information and interpretation panels at the car park, and then at Cupboard Field, a mile south of the site for the car park, a new drop-off, pick-up and turning point for the shuttle bus. Then landscaping proposals for both sites, improvement to the existing public footpath, as I say, part of the Cumbria Way, for the 1 mile between the proposed car park and Catbells, and finally the provision of a shuttle bus service to operate half-hourly from Easter weekend to the 31st of October. Just to start to see how things fit together in the area, I've annotated a number of different points on that aerial photo. As I say, I've got 2 more to show you as well. So number 1 is Ullock Moss itself. Number 2 is Keswick, over on the right hand side. Number 3, village of Portinscale, and the A66 to the north, which you can see there. 4, Derwent Water, and 5 down at the bottom is Catbells itself. Second photo, second aerial image, a little bit of a closer view of the area immediately around Portinscale. So number 1 is the site of the proposed car park at part of Ullock Moss. Number 2, again, Portinscale itself. Number 3 is Lingholm, and number 4, Nickel End Marine. Number 5 down towards Derwent Bay. And finally, looking at the area around Catbells, number 1 is the site of the proposed turning circle, Number 2 is Catbells, and you can see the main popular tourist route running up the front of Catbells there quite clearly on the image. And number 3 is the area around Derwent Bay, where the Keswick launch ferry drop-off point is, the jetty at Hawes End, which is referred to in the report, which again is a short distance from the start of the walk up Catbells. So turning then to some photos of the parking and access issues which are experienced in the area. These photos which I'm going to show you have been provided by the applicant, and just to be clear, I'm not attempting to show you specific problems here in specific areas or at specific times of the year. These are really just intended to give you a very general picture of the type of traffic problems that are experienced at times in the area. So as you can see, they can include the volume of traffic. They can include inconsiderate, inappropriate and illegal parking. They can include pedestrians in the road as a consequence. And they can include vehicles having to negotiate that inappropriate and inconsiderate parking. Finally, they can include parking on verges, commensurate damage to those verges in the area, as well as blocking accesses, farm accesses and the like normally, and the inconvenience that can cause to residents in the area and those attempting to use the public roads. Moving on then to the proposals themselves, the red line plan shows the 2 parts of the application site. One in the north, which is the site of the proposed 150 space car park on the outskirts of Portinscale, and at the very bottom you can see the site of the proposed shuttle bus turning circle at Cupboard Field. In between, and that's shown in red as well because of the proposed works to the footpath, you can see the section of the Cumbria Way that the applicant proposes to improve to facilitate use of the right of way by users of the car park in getting to the start of the walk at Catbells. Looking first in detail at the site plan for the car park at Ullock Moss, then what you can see is an access into the car park about halfway up on the right hand side of that plan. That would utilise and improve the existing access that already exists there. The proposed amenity building is almost directly in front of that access here, and then you've got 2 areas of parking either side of that amenities building to provide those 150 spaces. What you can also see on this photo, this plan, sorry, is some of the off-site highways works that the applicant is proposing, namely the bus lay-by. There's an existing bus stop here already. The proposals are to provide an actual lay-by. At the moment, it's a very informal bus stop, and the proposals are to provide an actual formal bus stop for the existing bus route. Then, in addition, in this area here, you have a speed reduction table and pedestrian crossing, which would link with the car park, allowing pedestrians to cross from the car park onto the public footpath, Cumbria Way, and along the public footpath down through the woods to the start of the walk at Catbells. There are detailed landscaping proposals with the application for both sites, and largely similar approach at both, essentially improving on the native trees and hedges which already exist in and around both sites. So native species tree planting, new trees, improvement of existing planting, improvement of existing hedges and planting of new hedges, shrub, understory planting in between those areas, both within the car park to break up the visual impact of the parked cars and the development, but also around the car park itself, where albeit there is existing landscaping, it can be improved in different areas. These are the proposals for the amenities building. The plan at the top shows the layout. You've essentially got two discrete buildings underneath a single canopy roof. And the building on the left-hand side would house the toilet facilities, and the building on the right-hand side would house the office for the shuttle bus operation and also the bike hire office. The physical nature of the building, so a timber frame building, a cedar shingle roof, as I say, cedar shingle canopy roof over those two buildings, giving circulation space, outdoor circulation space in between the two. Materials other than the roof, stone wall, low stone wall to the buildings with larch cladding above. Moving down then to the second part of the application site, which is a covered field, and the proposals are to introduce a turning head for the shuttle bus for drop off and pickup purposes. That will be formed off the public highway and in an area of an existing field gate. This is the area where the applicant operates their 28-day permitted development car park, which I've referred to in the report. The red dotted line, which you can see on that plan, is the point at which the public footpath essentially emerges from that route between Ullock Moss and Covered Field and the start of the walk up Catbells. Again, detailed landscaping proposals for this part of the site, native tree planting. It's less well screened currently. It's an open field with trees and hedges to the boundary. So the intentions are to bolster that and build on what's already there with native screening, hedge planting, new trees, medium and small sized trees, but also areas of wildflower grass. Finally, on the proposals, 3 photo montages of the amenities building, which you can see there in the middle of the proposed car park, an image taken from within the car park, then an image taken from outside the car park looking back down on it from the public road, again with the amenities building in the middle of the photo montage there. And finally, a further slightly different image, again internal to the car park, where you can see the 2 parts of the amenities building and the materials which I mentioned, which the building will be constructed out of. Some up-to-date photos of the sites as they appear today. Then this is the site of the proposed car park. That's the existing access, which will be improved upon. Amenities building essentially to the right of that access, and areas of parking immediately in front of the gate and the car there and to the right. This is a photo from within the site. This is a similar photo from a little bit further away, taken from the opposite side of the public road. You can just see the bus stop sign, slightly wonky, which is the extent of the existing bus stop, but would be the location of the proposed more formalised bus lay-by. A view looking in the opposite direction, back towards Portinscale Village, so the proposed car park on your left-hand side. A view of the entrance to Nickel End Marine, which is essentially immediately opposite the proposed entrance to the car park. A view again with the car park on the right-hand side. And finally, another view internal to the site, which essentially shows that level existing area in front of the existing access where the main area of car parking would be. And a view of the opposite side of the road at the start of the public footpath and the approximate location of the speed reduction table and pedestrian crossing. And these are some views of the land at Cupboard Field, the area for the proposed shuttle bus turning circle, approximately in the location of the field gate, which you can see there. View looking in the opposite direction, and you can see by the levels of the field and the where at that point where the gate is, how this is used on occasion for 28-day permitted development car parking. But again, the bus turning circle within that approximate area, and a closer view of the existing field gate. Final two images then of the area at Cupboard Field, which is down here. This is a view taken from an elevated position, essentially at the start of the Catbells Walk, looking down towards Cupboard Field, the existing field gate and proposed turning head just here where my cursor is. And a final view from a slightly elevated position, looking back down again at Cupboard Field through the trees. So to start to bring things together and to remind you of our assessment, summarise that for you and bring things together with our recommendation. These proposals are broadly similar to those which were refused by committee in 2021, when committee concluded that that application would not meet the exceptional requirements for new public car parking in the open countryside through policy 22, and they identified harm to the character and appearance of the area. Since then, there have been a number of material changes in circumstances, most importantly, the implementation of temporary and then permanent traffic regulation orders, namely the introduction of double yellow lines in Portinscale and on the road between Portinscale and Catbells. The local highway authority do not object to these proposals, and they now agree that all relevant and reasonable highway regulatory measures have been exhausted, and they accept that indiscriminate and illegal parking still occurs in the valley despite the weighting restrictions. So what you're essentially left with is the extent to which an unacceptable highway safety issue or hazard in the terms of policy 22 remains, and the extent to which the proposals would solve that problem, having regard to the other requirements of policy, mainly that the proposals would not introduce a net increase in traffic to the area. The local highway authority do not consider that the current situation represents a road safety risk regarding the risk of collision. They state that the double yellow lines have mitigated the parking problem to a large extent, but have not removed it altogether. And they clarify that they have never proposed public parking as part of the solution here. Work by the applicant to engage with the emergency services has produced broad agreement that anything which aids traffic flow here and reduces inconsiderate parking is to be welcomed. However, there is no specific evidence from those emergency services of them being prevented from accessing the area to attend emergencies. Local opinion on the matter remains firmly divided, with many representations both for and against the proposals. And the Butt Derwent Parish Council have moved from a position of supporting the original application to objecting to this one. Whilst policy 09 for the North Distinctive Area seeks to secure solutions to parking problems at Catbells, our assessment has concluded that the requirements of policy 22 for a new public car park in an open countryside location have not been satisfied. But the evidence does not demonstrate that the proposals would resolve an unacceptable highway safety issue or hazard. It does not demonstrate that the proposals would not lead to net increases in traffic accessing the location. Whilst there's a commitment to smart parking measures, by the applicant, no such measures have been presented as part of the application. Previously, in their decision in December 2021, committee identified landscape and visual harm both at Ullock Moss and at Cupboard Field. There have been no material changes in circumstance or in the proposal submitted, which give us reason to reach a different conclusion on that landscape visual harm. Nor do I consider that the identified public benefits, including visitor infrastructure, facilities, including the car park itself, shuttle bus, toilets, bike iron, improvements to the local highways network and public transport infrastructure outweigh the harm which has been identified to the National Park landscape and the World Heritage Site. Taking all of those matters into account, the recommendation is to refuse the application for the reasons set out in the report, with the addition of that reference to Policy 09 for the North Distinctive Area, which I mentioned at the outset. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Just before we get to questions, Kevin, welcome, Phil. You just came in slightly too late there. And
No,
just
that's fine.
an update. If I could just ask you to sit this one out, but you're good for all the others. Thanks. Members, any questions for Kevin? Jim.
Kevin, thank you for the very comprehensive report and taking us through it this morning. Very, very helpful. A couple of questions from me. The pictures of the cars that you shared at the beginning of your presentation showing the congestion, were they taken before or after the TRO measures had been put in place?
I was very careful to say at that point that they were intended to give a very general picture. They've been extracted from various documents provided by the applicant. Some of them were from before the TROs. Some of them are likely to have been during the temporary TRO, and some of them are most definitely after the TRO, so that there is a mixture. But again, the intention was to show in a very broad sense the type of difficulties that can be encountered rather than anything necessarily specific.
Sorry, do we know what materials are proposed for the roof of the building in the car park?
Yes, a cedar shingle.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Andy?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, the pictures of the parked cars, in whether that was before TROs or after TROs, isn't good. Isn't good if you live locally to try and travel around. It isn't good if you're on holiday there. Would there be anything put in place to stop that park? Because I'm assuming this car park's going to be paying display, so the applicant can make some revenue from it. What's to stop the visiting public still filling up the sides of the roads before they actually go and pay to park in the car park and get on the shuttle bus, or get on the shuttle bus and still continue parking everywhere else? If there's no mitigation going to be put in place to stop that, we end up with a big car park that may be full, but also the sides of the roads still full because people didn't want to pay in the pay and display. They could still use a shuttle bus, I suppose, but it'll be solving one problem, but still leaving the problem there unless there's been going to be something put in place to stop roadside parking.
I think to try and answer that question, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that there aren't any further measures proposed by the local highway authority now in terms of additional TRO. So the yellow lines that are there now are the ones that are there now. So there's nothing to stop members of the public, well, either parking illegally on the WL lines, but also parking potentially legally, but not necessarily appropriately, on areas where there aren't WL lines currently.
So they could use the car park, or they could take their luck and try and get a gap in the road. Any other questions for Kevin before we go to public speaking? No. Okay, we have some sets of public speaking for this case. So our first speakers are Mr. Buttinger and Councillor Haworth. Is that right? Did I pronounce the names right? If you would like to come forward, please. So I'll just explain how the public speaking works here. So you have 5 minutes to speak. You can share that between yourselves. How you want to divide it up is entirely up to you. Daniel will run the timer when you start. It'll run down to 5 minutes, and if you're still speaking after 5 minutes, we'll very nicely cut you off. So if you press the microphone when you're ready to speak, and whenever you're ready.
Hello, I'm Caroline Haworth. I live in Portinscale and I understand the problems around traffic firsthand. I've been on the Above Derwent Parish Council for more than 5 years, and this is the first time we've wanted to come and speak at DCC in support of your offices, in addition to our usual written representation. Rather than approve the development of a large permanent car park with additional facilities in a busy village, we encourage the National Park to develop a more agile policy of temporary car parks as and when needed in the right location, with the overall aim to disperse, not attract additional traffic. The application in front of us is from Ulloch Moss, as we have seen, a mile further away from Cupboard Field, which was used by the applicant as a temporary car park this summer. What is significant is that this is an application for a permanent car park with the infrastructure we've seen outlined. In order to ensure that the 150 space car park and facilities are financially viable and not only used on good weather days, when we do see, as the photos show, high numbers of cars in and through the village, the applicant would need to increase traffic into the village across the year as a whole. There is already significant concern about traffic congestion within the village and at the Portinscale junction of the A66 in particular. Because of this, many parishioners describe Ulloch Moss as the wrong place. So we do need solutions to the problems created by traffic congestion in the area, but this development, if successful, may increase rather than reduce these problems. What is needed is a much more comprehensive traffic management plan for the whole area, including Newlands, Buttermere, Honister, Borrowdale and Keswick. Thank you.
Good morning, my name's Max Buttinger. I too live in Portinscale with my wife and 2 young children. On the first question, I recognise the first 2 photos. They're both from before the TRO. They're quite famous in my household as pictures that we remember from that time, which was during COVID. It's not like that now. I would reassure you of that. Those pictures don't give an accurate impression of what it's like now. Since the TRO, we've made significant progress. As the emergency services say in their letters that they've written in, they've never had a single example of not being able to access along the road. To the second question about people parking on the road and what's to stop them continuing if Ulloch Moss goes ahead. Well, the applicant hasn't asked any of them whether they would park at Ulloch Moss. There's not a single survey here of people parking on the road where the applicant has said, guys, look, here's the proposals. You know, if we put a new car park in here, would you guys park on the road or would you have come and use my car park? He hasn't asked anybody. So how do we know what changes of behaviour would take place? My big concern and the big concern of a lot of the people in the village that I talk to is that if this new car park goes in, the changes in behaviour you'll see are that people that are currently parking in car parks in Keswick will switch to parking at Ulloch Moss. Keswick is the gateway. Keswick has big car parks. One of them is owned by the rugby club. The money goes back into the community. Instead, you'd be shifting potentially hundreds of cars through Portinscale, through the village to Ulloch Moss. But again, that's just my view. No one's asked anybody that. No one's gone and done a survey of people in Keswick and asked what changes in behaviour would take place. You know, there's no, you know, we're talking about 150 spaces is the other point I would make. You know, that's more than the Booths car park in Keswick, which is about 125 spaces. It's also significantly more than the total number of cars that are parked on the entire road that we're talking about, even at the peak time, and that's according to the applicant's own surveys. When you add in a bus terminal, a visitor centre, a bike hire business, it doesn't sound like just a car park, it sounds like a major new transport hub going in. Policy 9.
Thank you, Mr. Buttinger. 5 minutes, thank you very much. We'll just hang on, we'll see if there's any questions from members. Members got any questions? Jim.
Thank you very much for your feedback and thoughts. Just because I don't know the area brilliantly well, although I do know it, would the car park offer any benefit for people parking and coming back into the village? And is there businesses in the village that may benefit by the fact that there's easier parking and access? So I'm just getting another perspective of a benefit from the car park for the village. Do you perceive anything there, or do you think the village is adequately served for the businesses at the moment?
I think if we were talking about 20 to 30 space small village car park, you'd find that some of the businesses would say, well, yeah, that you know, exactly that. But the thing is, you're talking about 150 space car park, and what the worry is that that's just going to be filled up with ice cream vans. It's going to be filled up with burger vans. It's going to be a whole visitor centre in itself. People are going to drive through the village. The chalet's got a nice little area to sit out in at the moment. That's just going to have cars going backwards and forwards, driving past the village to get to the new visitor centre and all these facilities. It's a rival. This particular proposal is a rival to the village. It's not seen as something that will help.
Can I add to that? I would say that there's been a real push to encourage people to use more sustainable ways of getting to the village. And a lot of users of the businesses at the moment, such as the Chalet Cafe, come into the village by foot, or they may take the Keswick Launch, which, you know, is a new, very successful venture, and has reduced the number of cars coming in to use those businesses, I would say.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? No? Well, thank you very much. If I could ask you to return to your seats. So our next set of speakers are Mr. Granger, Mr. Blair, and Mr. Tongue. I understand you can, all three, if you'd like to come up and grab a seat, yeah, that's fine. So again, it's 5 minutes shared between the three of you, however you wish to split it up. If you go over the 5 minutes, we'll do the cut off. Just start whenever you're ready. If you use the microphone button as well, thank you.
Recommendation in the report is in part based on the view that local highway authority consider that the TROs have successfully resolved the highway safety issues in the locality. This is not the case and is not what's been stated by the LHA in their responses. The responses state that the TROs have mitigated the problems but not resolved them, and recognise that ongoing parking issues could make the passage of emergency vehicles difficult, if not impossible, at times. They do state that ongoing parking issues are not considered to be a highway safety risk in relation to the risk of collisions, but as identified in the committee report, Policy 22 requires a broader consideration of highway safety issues and hazards. The conclusion of the LHA, together with the evidence submitted as part of this application, clearly demonstrate that there are ongoing highway safety issues and hazards which would be resolved by the proposals in line with the requirements of Policy 22, delivering a significant public benefit.
Good morning. My name is Peter Blair, Head of Transport at Tetra Tech. 37 years experience, and I do a lot of work in Cumbria. Been involved in this for the last 4 years. I can't recall a case where the problem is so long-standing and where the solution is so obvious. The scientist Lord Kelvin said to measure is to know. So when I was appointed, I measured and surveyed so we would have evidence rather than supposition. And we've undertaken 4 major studies and surveys. The vehicles surveyed at Cupboard Field had driven 79 miles on average, multi-occupancy vehicles. They're coming irrespective of parking availability, and they seem to keep coming irrespective of parking fines. Now, a hazard survey report was undertaken, authored by one of the country's most eminent road safety auditors, who incidentally just happened to be the Cumbria County Council area engineer for these roads. He found that multiple hazards are created by each individual inappropriately parked car. The policy requirement is that the proposals should remove a hazard. The proposals will remove thousands. If there's any doubt that hazards remain, ask why the planning conditions proposed are stated to be in the interests of highway safety and to repair the verges. The obvious solution is well documented, and it's in 3 parts. But even the best 3-part mechanism won't work if a key part is missing. The double yellow lines haven't worked because there's nowhere else to park. The shuttle bus didn't work because there are too few patrons. Parking availability for existing vehicles in a location which intersects traffic and reduces mileage, and then removes the hazards that their parking creates as well and stops the verge damage, will enable the double yellows to work and will create the demand for the shuttle service. Parking is the obvious missing 3rd part of the solution, which will enable it all to work. But I would also ask you just to think about the families and visitors and the national park. They've been demonised for wanting to enjoy a day out by car, even though many cars, including multi-occupancy cars, which these are sustainable forms of travel. A 160-mile round trip, the average, can be stressful enough. And when they arrive to find that there's no parking options, they've got choices. They can drive around, space searching, park inappropriately, or drive off elsewhere to repeat the whole problem somewhere else. It's all abortive and totally unnecessary. Public transport is not a viable option for 4 people on a 160-mile round day trip. I can give you itineraries and costs for that. It's over £200. We're all on the same side here. We want to stop the damage. We want to stop the danger. And we want to stop the unnecessary mileage. Now, whatever the decision is today, my family will continue to come to our national park, but so will everyone else. This proposal gives you the opportunity to solve this 20-year-old problem now and gain multiple benefits just by letting these existing visitors park at Ullack Moss. All they will know when they arrive is that they can enjoy the Lake District and the day that they've all been looking forward to. They won't be aware that an informed decision to allow the car park has delivered footpath upgrades, public transport to benefit everyone, not just the car users. It's reduced vehicular mileage, it's reduced vehicles on the roads, reduced inappropriate parking and reduced vehicle speeds, and reduced verge damage. It will allow emergency vehicles and bus services to pass, and it will allow the double yellow lines to work. They won't be aware of any of those, or that those benefits have been achieved at no cost to the council. But immediately, and increasingly as time passes, the Lake District National...
Thank you, Mr. Blair. That's the 5 minutes. Thank you. Just hang on, we'll see if there's any questions from members. Members, any questions? Jim.
Few questions, if I may. In your surveys, on the peak days, did you identify how many cars were problem parked?
Yes.
And what volume of cars was that?
Okay. So the double yellow lines can only be introduced on legal grounds for safety reasons, and the Highway Authority had to decide whether to make them permanent. So a survey was undertaken to a specification agreed by them on a day which wasn't a peak day. It was agreed by them to be a typical day. We offered for them to come and be part of it, but they declined. And we undertook the surveys, all on dash cam, it was a drive round survey that recorded it all. There were, from memory, 60 or so inappropriately parked vehicles. I had an answer to your question about were the photographs taken before or after the TROs. I would say, well, what day of the week were they taken? Because there weren't very many parked cars in many of those photographs. We get clients sending us photographs every single weekend of significant parking issues happening now. Look, the official survey to the satisfaction of the Highway Authority on a typical day was undertaken in 2023. They asked us to repeat it in 2024. I do apologise, my phone's talking to me. That's never happened before. That will be turned off. Official surveys 2023, 2024. Not only did they find typically 60, I think it was 68 inappropriately parked vehicles and lots of other issues. They didn't show an improvement from one year to the other. So the double yellow lines, people say they're working, and I have no doubt. I mean, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I might see them and take option B, which is to try and drive up over Honister or down to Buttermere and try and park there. But plenty of people, when they consider the cost of a £70 fine, having driven 160 miles on a family weekend that everyone's been looking forward to, they just ditch it in the verge. And they seem to be, and this is speculation, this isn't measured or known, seems to me that they're prepared to pay the £70 fine, or perhaps it's half of that if they pay it quickly, just as another cost for coming to the Lake District. The point is they just wreak havoc and damage.
And thank you for that. Do you have a view on how many days of the year there is problem parking?
Well, the first time I visited the site was on an April evening, and it was about 8 o'clock at night, and there were inappropriately parked vehicles then. The hazard survey undertaken by Mr. Nicholson of Nicholson Sloan, when he did his hazard survey and observed all of that, that was, I think, the 5th of February this year. So again, very much off season, very much it's happening then. It seems to me, from the evidence that I've seen in the site visits, that it is very regular indeed. I don't want to say it's 332 days, because someone will say, no, it's 278. It's fairly constant.
Can I add to that? Within the application documents is a breakdown of the number of parking tickets that have been issued throughout the entire year, and that shows a steady flow of parking tickets on every month through the year. So the TROs are effective in giving us an indication that there are people parking illegally or inappropriately on double yellow lines throughout the entire year.
Yeah, thank you. You've got three other questions. Are you making any facility? Is there any proposals within the car park to make facility for minibuses or coaches, or is this entirely cars?
Currently, the drawings only illustrate car parking provisions. However, the provisions for the minibus shuttle that would go between Coverfield and Alec-Moss would then have nighttime storage there.
Okay, thank you. And could we just talk briefly about your proposals for smart parking? As I read in the paper, I believe it was to put it on National Park website and provide frequent updates. Have I got that correct?
Yeah, so the agreement back in the original application was to integrate with the National Park's own infrastructure in advertising the availability of parking spaces within the National Park, and that was considered appropriate at that time. We consider that an appropriate measure of integrating our proposals with the park's own initiatives. But more importantly, we don't think we should be promoting this car park with its own app, with its own website, in order to advertise its provisions to the wider public. As soon as 3 carloads of friends find something that they can share through WhatsApp, that they can then book a car park through an app, it suddenly becomes an attractive proposition to use that online facility, where we see the National Park's own safer parking initiatives through their own websites as being something that people have to make effort to go to find out where there is space available for them, and then consider their options across multiple car parking locations.
Could I just also add, a criticism of the proposals is that there isn't detail on smart parking, but actually the policy says where such measures are appropriate in terms of scale of parking and are viable. Now the question then comes, is smart parking appropriate here? We do not want to advertise the smart park.
Okay, thank you. Final question. The objectors raised concern about food and beverage vendors, mobile vans basically coming and using spaces in the car park. Is that something you've considered or not part of your consideration?
It's not part of the proposals, and yeah, that's just not part of what is proposed. It's a car park, and the visitor, it will be the bike hire and visitor information, but nothing more than that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Doug?
Thank you. Thank you for the explanations you've already given. Just to pick on one item that was alluded to earlier about the size of the car park compared with the, for example, number of cars that were previously parked and potentially still are, and those are two different factors in one. The size of the car park compared with those cars that you're attempting to take off the vergers and are currently parked. What are your views on those relative sizes?
Well, just in terms of the demand for the car park and where it's located, the intention is to intercept people who are driving to Capbells. I gave several examples of what the choices of those motorists are. One of them is to park inappropriately, and those are the numbers that are regularly photographed and recorded in the surveys. What you can't count are the people who drive up and down the road and then drive off somewhere else. And if they go to Honister or Buttermere or Grasmere, then you're talking about 40 or 50 miles of inappropriate driving. Unnecessary driving. So there are people who will adhere to the double yellow lines, but then undertake unnecessary mileage, and the car park would accommodate them. The 150 space car park at many times of the day and year will be significantly underused, but it's there to stop the damage and the illegal parking that happens at the peak times as well.
Just in terms of where the number came from, before the TROs were in place, there was a survey done of the number of cars that were parked on the road in places that would now be illegal, and it was, I think, 170. So that was on very busy days. So that was where the actual 150 number came from. It was based on the parking that was taking place on the road.
And that was done when?
That's part of the original application.
Right, thank you.
Any other questions, members? Nope. Well, thank you very much, gents. If I could ask you to return to your seats. So, members, we are now into our discussion part of the item. So we can make comments, we can make proposals on this application. Who would like to start us off? Is that you, Doug?
Looks like it is. Where do we start? Thank you very much for the report and working through the various changes and the various views that have altered and the various circumstances that have changed since the original application, and indeed since our site visit as well, which was extremely helpful, certainly for me, in getting a handle on the situation as a whole, as well as the factors that have been raised today. It's a difficult balance between the policies that we have in place as a national park, specific policies, and weighing those up between each other, given the fact that these are exceptional requirements that are part of a decision that we have to make. If we are to use policy 22, it has to be exceptional, and it has to be something that is proposed and is agreed by the various different parties. By agreed, I mean that the need is agreed and is not over detrimental compared with the works that are being done. The landscape and visual harm given to the area is still obviously an outstanding item, but it's one that we have to weigh up in comparison to the benefit that would be given by the car park. I'm not sure that the answers that have been given fully answered to me about the potential detrimental effect of increased cars in the area as a result of any car park. And it's that weighing up of those different matters that is crucial to us. This is open countryside. This is a lovely area with a small village nearby, which has the need to make the traffic flow through it viable for its size, but also viable for the fact that people are going to what is an area of the national park that we want to encourage people to go to in a sustainable way. The buildings proposed will have an effect on the landscape and the visual effect of the area. Whether it is fully something that is too detrimental for the benefit that is proposed, I await other members' comments on. But the improvements done to the area as a whole, whether it's the footpath or whether it's crossing safety, etc., do not have necessarily that much weight to me, for me personally at the moment, with regard to how we are solving an initial problem and whether the solving of this problem weighs, whether the solution to the problem is too much for what the problem is initially. Whether 150 space car park is something that will be an exceptional solution and will conform to policy. It comes down to two different items, principle and size, and I'm not necessarily convinced at the moment that that circle has been squared, and I'm currently minded to go with the officer's recommendations, but I await other members' comments.
Thank you, Doug. Jim.
Mark, thank you, Doug. That was very helpful, and I don't want to repeat the points Doug's made. I think what I would call out in my thinking, clearly, for consistency and to be minded, we're aware of the previous decision. Our colleagues, I'm sure, debated at length. I also give weight to advice from the parish councils when we get to these meetings, because they know the area well, and I feel they can often be our eyes and ears on the ground. And I particularly note that the parish council has changed their position over time on this, which would indicate to me that the TROs and other actions have had some mitigation for the previous problems. I think additional factors to those Doug's mentioned is I think there is a risk it could attract more cars. The fact that people know parking is there, they don't use the alternative services, as people have mentioned, it draws cars out of Keswick. So we finish up with the same position. I appreciate it's not going to be advertised, but the smart parking, I feel, needs to be smarter. We have seen examples here where people have pre-booking ANPR cameras and barriers on gates as a solution. I think something around smart parking needs to control this. Otherwise, like what Doug said, this could attract more cars because there is the potential parking there, and we just finish up with a similar problem. And finally, it's scale, 60 to 70 cars versus 150 car park, and policy 09 versus policy 20 or 22, which 22, it's a very significant development in a very important piece of countryside. And I think I'm weighted to the officer's decision, to go with the officer's decision and with the decision of the previous committee on that basis at the moment. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else? Chris, Andy?
Yeah, just throw a spanner in the works then. I've listened to both sides. Would it make people stop parking at, say, the Keswick sites that were mentioned to park there? In my view, probably not. If you're parking in Keswick, for me, you're going for more of the Keswick experience. couldn't tell you how far in miles it was. It was on the map from the Keswick car park to us. Would I go out and park out there and then walk back into Keswick? Probably not. That's me. Some people will walk for miles. It's whether the size is appropriate for the numbers of inappropriate size cars. Is there any leeway that size could be reduced slightly so that Portinscale doesn't become a motorway to a massive car park? The developer or the applicant has offered upgrades to the footpath. That's great, but is that just a one-off upgrade, or will the ongoing maintenance that path be covered with an agreement as well? It's all right upgrading the path, but after the rain we've had this last few days, that path could be gone overnight and then it's inaccessible. So would there be any ongoing maintenance of them upgrades that were taking place? I think currently I'm more in line to go against the officer's recommendation and improve this, but it is a tricky one. It is a tricky one.
That's why it's at this committee. Chris, would you like to say anything?
If I must, I was trying to avoid it. Policy 22. We will launch support additional public park region that helps to reduce the need to travel by private motor vehicle. I'm not convinced that we are increasing the need to travel by private motor vehicle because people can't park there and they'll slope off over Honister to Buttermere or there's the routes. I, for one, I like Portinscale, but I stay clear of it a little because when it has been as crowded as it's been in the past. If I were in Keswick, I would be far more inclined to drive around to Portinscale if there was a chance I was going to get somewhere to park. And I wouldn't want to be in a car park there which ended up with a burger van and so as to extract money from my back pocket for my grandchildren. I don't think policy 22 has been satisfied. I think I'm against it.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, for my part, the car parking policy we have at the National Park here is that outside of rural service centres, it's quite an exacting set of criteria you have to meet. And the critical in my mind is that the proposal would have to resolve an unacceptable highway safety issue or hazard. Now, I'd be expecting quite a much stronger response from the Highways Authority plus the emergency services to prove that unacceptability. So I would say it's not necessarily policy compliant. However, we still can grant permissions if they're not policy compliant. If there's other material considerations there which may outweigh the lack of policy compliance, and there's certain advantages, I can see people using this. However, I would be sort of expecting the parish council and a majority of local support for this kind of thing in order to outweigh the policy issues. So I would probably be minded towards the officer's recommendation as well. So with that said, does anybody want to say anything else before we ask for proposals? No? Would anybody like to make a proposal?
To propose that we go with the officer's recommendation for the reasons laid out very clearly in the report.
Yeah, and that includes the reference to policy 09 as well, as Kevin said.
Policy 09 and 022.
Anybody wish to second or go against?
I'd like to second that for the reasons outlined.
Any other before we go for the vote? No, so we've got a proposal for Jim Jackson, seconded by Doug Rathbone, that we refuse the application as per officer's report with that extra reference to policy 09. All those in favour? All those against? So it's 1, 2, 3, 4 in favour, 1 against.
4 in favour, 1 against.
So that the application is refused. Thank you very much, members. I propose a 10-minute break if that's okay, and we come back here at 11:15. Thank you. I think we're all back. So our next application is number 4 on the schedule. It's Grassmoor, again, Portinscale. So Abigail is going to tell us all about it.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for a 2-storey extension over a single-storey garage and utility room, as well as a lean-to roof over the front door at Grassmoor in Portinscale. This application is before committee today because the recommendation of approval is contrary to the Parish Council's objection. The application site is within the centre of Portinscale with a public footpath running to the west. The public footpath runs down Rickaby Lane, where the site is accessed from. These are the existing floor plans and elevations at Grassmoor. The dwelling is detached and constructed of wet dash render walls with a hipped slate roof and UPVC windows. On the northeast side elevation, you can see that there is a lean-to garage extension with a flat roof utility extension connected to the kitchen. These are the proposed floor plans, which show the dwelling would largely have the same footprint as existing, with proposed 2-storey side extension located in place of the existing single-storey extension. The only increase in footprint would be the proposed lean-to roof over the front door, which would project 1.3 metres forwards. The 2-storey extension would be constructed of materials to match the main dwelling. The roof would be hipped, sitting slightly lower than the main roof, and there would be a Juliet balcony on the first floor of the rear elevation. The lean-to porch roof would have slate walls with oak posts supporting their slate roof. So moving on to photos from the site. This photo is taken from Rickaby Lane, which is also a public footpath, looking at the front elevation of Grassmoor. It shows the existing single-storey extensions on the side elevation, where the 2-storey extension is proposed. This photo shows the rear elevation of the existing garage and utility room extensions. Turning around, this photo shows the view from the rear elevation of the extension. So the proposed first floor Juliet balcony would have limited views towards pine trees due to screening from hedges and trees. Just looking slightly to the left a bit. The Juliet balcony would also afford views towards the rear gardens at Quiet Ways and the Old Barn. However, these gardens are already overlooked by existing first floor windows to the rear of Grassmoor. Now we're moving on to the garden at White Screes, which sits to the northeast of the site. The proposed 2-storey extension would be located where the arrow is pointing at the site. You can see that the existing dwelling is somewhat prominent in view from the garden. However, the garden still remains open and well lit. Moving towards the conservatory at White Screes, again, you can see the open nature of the garden as a whole, despite its proximity to Grassmoor. You can also see an existing window on the side elevation of Grassmoor that overlooks the garden at White Screes. The proposed extension would only have one obscure glazed first floor window, so it would reduce the level of overlooking. This photo is taken on the other side of the conservatory at White Screes, looking northwards. And this photo is taken in the kitchen at White Screes and shows the existing view is already relatively dominated by Grassmoor. The proposed extension wouldn't project any closer towards White Screes, and the open view on the left-hand side there would still be maintained. So in summary, I consider the main issues to be the impact of the design of the extension on the character of the area and the impact on neighbouring amenity. Both the proposed side extension and lean-to porch roof would reflect the form, design and materials of the existing dwelling. The Juliet balcony to the rear wouldn't be publicly visible. So for these reasons, I consider the design of the proposals to be acceptable. The proposed side extension wouldn't increase the footprint of Grassmoor. The garden at White Screes is already dominated by Grassmoor, and I consider that the proposed extension wouldn't worsen this to a harmful extent. The remaining garden space will remain open and well lit, and there will be no overlooking. I therefore consider that neighbouring dwellings will continue to have an acceptable level of amenity and privacy. Overall, I recommend that the application be approved, subject to the conditions set out in the report.
Thank you, Abigail. Members, do you have any questions? Abigail? No, we do have some public speaking. We have Mr. Winter for this one. Mr. Winter, you've been here 1 or 2 times before, but it's 5 minutes from when you start to speak, and if you go over 5 minutes, we will let you know about it. So whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. In the absence of the scheme's architect, who can't be here today, I've just been asked to address members in support of this application. In preparation for this, I visited the site, viewed the scheme from the applicant's dwelling and the wider area. More importantly, I've also met and visited the owner-occupier of the adjacent bungalow at White Screes, and viewed the proposed extensions to Grassmoor both from her garden and from all the rooms within the property that face towards them. Now, I know that Above Derwent Parish Council takes its responsibilities for commenting on planning applications very seriously, and I was particularly mindful of those comments on this application when I visited this site. Now, having said that, both the neighbour, Marjorie Udall, and I concur with the conclusions reached by the planning officer that the proposed extensions will not have any adverse overbearing impacts on her enjoyment of her property. The physical relationship between the properties, the room layouts, the orientations, the design of the detail of the scheme, which reduce the ridge height to below the existing ridgeline, and where it basically will recess back against the existing building, also mean that there will be no adverse impacts on her enjoyment of her garden. Neither do the alterations have any adverse impacts on neighbouring dwellings or the self-catering establishments nearby. They, in fact, reflect the character of the area. So I therefore conclude that the proposals are policy compliant in that they will retain an acceptable level of amenity and privacy for both current and future occupiers of both properties, and that on this occasion you can safely set the comments of the parish council aside and approve the application.
Thank you very much, Mr. Winter. Any questions for Mr. Winter, members? No, thank you very much. So we'll get into our discussion bit. Again, I'll ask if anyone wants to start us off. Chris.
I was particularly thankful for the views from White Screes of the proposed development, because the concern was that if it was overbearing or not. I'm satisfied that it isn't. So I'm happy to go with your recommendation.
Do you want to make that proposal, Chris, or just, yeah, sure. Jim.
I agree. Not a material increase in footprint, fairly consistent with the existing building, satisfied about the amenity for neighbours, which was the point the parish council raised. So based on that feedback, happy to second Chris's proposal.
Yep. Any other comments? Any alternatives? Nope. We'll go for the vote then. So proposed by Chris Southwood and Seth Ward and seconded by Jim Jackson. Grant permission as per officer's report. All those in favour?
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much for that one, members. So our next one on the schedule with public speaking is number 8, and that is land off Woodside Road at Crossthwaite. Emma's come to tell us about this.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for an agricultural workers dwelling on land off Woodside Road between Bowland Bridge and Crossthwaite. The application is before you today because Crossthwaite and Lythe Parish Council object to the proposal on the grounds that the land is a greenfield site and unnecessary given that the applicant currently lives 2.4 miles away. Since writing my report, we've received a further representation from Crossthwaite and Lythe Parish Council, reaffirming their objection on the grounds of the site being a greenfield site. However, they state if the site is not a greenfield site, then they would remove their objection. The application site comprises pasture land in the open countryside adjacent to modern farm buildings and is surrounded by a network of rural roads. The closest roads are Smithy Lane to the west and Woodside Road to the east. Our housing policy supports new permanent homes on farm holdings, that supports the functional need of the farm business. The housing SPD, the supplementary planning document, requires a functional test to establish whether it's essential for one or more workers to live on the holding. The agricultural appraisal submitted with the application confirms a labour requirement for 2.9 persons and reasons why a dwelling is needed, including animal welfare and to provide security. The supplementary planning document for housing expects evidence that has been provided that the agricultural activity is ongoing, is established for 3 years and been profitable for at least one of these, is currently financially sound and has a clear prospect of remaining so. The submitted information meets the requirements of the development plan and is acceptable in principle, subject to an agricultural workers' occupancy condition. So the further matters for your consideration I consider to be the impact on the character of the area. This photograph shows the grassed area in the centre where the proposed dwelling would be located, with the farm buildings behind, the track to the north on the right hand side of this photograph, and the undulating land and limestone outcrops to the south on the left hand side of the photograph. This photograph shows the other side of the track, and you can see again there the undulating levels of the land and the rocky outcrops to the north on the right hand side of that photograph. This slide shows the proposed location of the dwelling and the proposed realignment of the track. So beforehand it was straight, now it's moving in a sort of curved position 7 metres to the north. And then you can see that relationship of that proposed dwelling, that's within that red line there on that plan, the relationship of the dwelling with the existing agricultural buildings to the west. This slide is useful to understand the levels of the site surrounding the proposed dwelling. If you look at that blue line there, it shows a section through the dwelling with the undulating landform either side that I described to you on the previous photos. This slide shows the proposed elevations. The proposed building will be a simple rectangular shape constructed from local vernacular materials. This slide shows the proposed ground floor. And this one, the proposed first floor. Given that the proposed dwelling would be set back into the site from Woodside Road, surrounded by undulating land and rocky outcrops, I consider the building not to be in a prominent public view and visible in the context of the existing farm buildings. The local materials I consider to contribute to the wider landscape character as seen from a distance. And in summary, I consider that there would not be any adverse impact on the character of the area. And so in view of that, I'm recommending approval of the application subject to the conditions as set out in my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Members, any questions? Jim and then Bill.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the report, and what looks like a particularly wet day when you were out there. I notice on the conditions there isn't one about the materials that be used for the building. Yeah, we mentioned several times it's important that it links back to how it looks locally. Did you not feel a condition was required, or have I missed something to make sure that the building is exactly as we expect when it's completed?
I think it would be important to have a condition on requiring particularly the roof materials. It may be that they're marked on the plan, but I think it would also be, if it is on the plan, then I think we should have a condition on.
Thank you.
Bill.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I ask Emma, remind me, I don't know whether I've ever known or I've forgotten, but have we, do we have a target for the number of self-build properties within the authority? And does this help towards that target if it is a self-build property?
That's like a sort of grenade question.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Great question. Yes, we do have a target. It's targets to provide sufficient number of self-build plots though, so self-build and service plots, this wouldn't contribute to that because it is not a plot that you're delivering. You're delivering a dwelling. The dwelling would contribute though to the overall housing target, so that's 1,200 across the plan period, so that's 15 years, so 80 a year, so it would be contributing to that. What I would say is that because we're looking at a new build house on a greenfield site in the open countryside, my strong view would be contributing to that housing target is not enough in itself to justify this development. The thing that makes this development acceptable as a matter of principle is the demonstrable agricultural need, the functional need, the necessity for an agricultural worker's dwelling, and demonstrating those tests.
That's grand, thank you.
Andy.
So are we confident that it is classed as greenfield? Because the parish council did say if it was classed as brownfield, being associated close to the other buildings, if it was brownfield, they would withdraw. Is it definitely a greenfield site? Is that because of the distance from the other agricultural buildings, or?
It's definitely greenfield in the sense that the parish council mean it. So it's an undeveloped open countryside site. It hasn't had buildings on it previously. It's not been previously developed.
It's open countryside. The policy generally says no residential unless it's for agricultural dwelling type exceptions and things like that.
I think the other thing is previously developed land. It's defined by government in the National Planning Policy Framework, and previously developed land excludes land that is or was last occupied by agricultural or forestry buildings as well. So having agricultural buildings on land or having had agricultural buildings there previously doesn't make that previously developed land that it's excluded from the definition.
Doug. Thank you. Just to confirm one of the points raised by the parish council, it meant that it's not something that we should be including. You know, the fact that there isn't a generator included in the application, fine, box ticked, mentioned in comments. Detrimental environmental impacts due to sewerage treatment plant. I couldn't see any other comments regarding that, or indeed whether that is relevant to our process. Could you just enlighten me, please?
So there is a sewage packet treatment plant proposed as part of the application. So that would be within where you can see the house there. It's just to the western side. That would be controlled. So we've got the regulatory controls through environmental health. So that would be covered if there were any issues during that. So I don't think we can. Yeah, I think it's covered. Yeah.
Any other questions? Emma, just a quick one from me. The nature of the business, I'm guessing it's sheep and some cattle.
Yes.
Because there's a requirement in our SPD of a functional need, whereas in the National Planning Policy Framework, it's essential need. And it's how you interpret it, really. Functional need tends to be, as described in our one, you need to be there to deal with emergencies. I'm guessing they're lambing and calving at this site as per the appraisal. So that's where the functional need would come from. However, they live quite closely. I suppose the question would be, can you remotely monitor that and get to the place within 2.4 miles? I mean, my opinion is if you've got that number of animals, it is an essential need to be there. But the functional need is slightly more tricky. But you've been there. Your opinion is, could you get there conceivably within 2.4 miles if there was an emergency? Could you travel 2.4 miles in an emergency in the middle of the night on a windy, snowy winter's day kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there are concerns from the parish council about the existing residency of the applicant, but I think they've provided good evidence that they don't think that is appropriate for their business. So that's set out in their agricultural appraisal, and I consider that these arguments are would meet those requirements.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Nope, we have some public speaking. It's Ms. Jones. Ms. Jones, you've been here a few times before as well. So 5 minutes whenever you're ready.
I definitely won't use 5 minutes because most of the issues have been covered. I was just sort of coming here because the report's very detailed, as you've seen. So it's really to answer any questions. So what I will pick up on some of the questions that the members have asked. So in relation to the generator, the reason that was originally raised by the parish council was because the applicant wasn't sure whether they were going to be able to get an electric connection. So they were maybe having to go off grid, but they've now actually confirmed an electric connection that is a suitable connection because it started off at 230,000. So they were thinking maybe we need to go off grid. So that generator issue has gone now. Greenfield, totally agree, and is what we said to the parish council, that it is a greenfield, but that the assessment needs to be carried out as per what the planner has done in relation to the landscape impact and the need for the building. So which I think has been covered by the officer in detail. One of the reasons as well, we provided evidence as to why we have to be on the site, but there is the functional and the essential, the two phrases sort of intertwined from PPS 7 sort of 15 years ago that used functional and essential. The two are sort of intertwined, but we've also provided evidence as some of the evidence in that the insurance for the farm is not valid if we're not on the site, and he spends most of his time there all the time, and it actually, when he's lambing and calving, he's actually just sleeping in one of the buildings, then going back, and obviously he's got a young family, so it's creating that balance. I don't think there's, and we're happy with the materials condition to be added because we've submitted the materials, so we're happy for those to be as we've submitted. I think that's everything I've got to say really, that because I think it's been covered by both extensively within the report and the presentation and your questions, but I'm really here more to answer any questions if you have any more questions based on the submission. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions, members? No, I think you've done it all. So we'll go straight into our discussion, members. What do you think? Right, Phil.
I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation. I feel that being in agriculture is very difficult, and I think we would want to facilitate the promotion of agriculture if we can. And so I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Okay, I'll take that as a proposal. Yeah, Doug?
I'd like to second that. However, wanting to make sure that Jim's added condition is in there, provided the proposer agrees to that. Whilst I love to hear the word vernacular mentioned, it needs to be backed up.
Sorry, what was the proposal again? No, what was the condition?
That we agree with the no.
The condition. We need a condition to define the materials that we want.
A pre.
So I think there's three things there. There's the roofing, those elements of the roofing that aren't solar panels. I think we would typically expect a slate that's been mined or quarried in the county of Cumbria, riven, not sawn, laid in diminishing courses from Easter Ridge. You'd want a rough cast render there, and you'd want to make sure that the coins, the coins are quite a dominant or a feature there as well. So obviously the geology, the type of stone that you're using. So they're the three elements: roofing slate, rough cast render, and decent coins.
So I would propose that, and like to ask if the proposer would be agreeable.
I'm all over those coins. Yes, thank you.
Anyone else want to make comment or alternative? No. No, I think for my part, yeah, I think it is essential to be there to run a proper business. I see it quite a good thing to create a new farm instead the national park. So we'll go for the vote then. So we're proposed by Phil Dixon, seconded by Doug Rathbone. Grant, as per officer's recommendation, for the addition of that condition for pre-approval of materials. All those in favour?
It's unanimous approval with conditions.
Thank you very much, members. So we'll go back into our non-public speaking applications. So number 2, but the number 2, as I suppose the other side of it, were the removal of an agricultural tie. However, Andrew has asked if we can defer this till next meeting because more information has come in and it's a bit too much to describe to us verbally without it being in the report. Would you be okay with deferring that to a future meeting? Okay, so number 2 we have deferred. So now into number 3, which is on screen, number 19 Church Street in Keswick.
Thank you, Chair.
Phil.
So this application seeks planning permission to change the use of a guest house into a house in multiple occupation at 19 Church Street, Keswick. The application is referred to committee because the recommendation of approval is contrary to the views of the Town Council. There is one update to the report that before members. You may have noticed that condition 3 in the report was a drafting area. There wasn't any plans pulled through into that particular condition, so that the suggestion is to amend that just to include the only plan that was submitted, the location plan. So condition 3 would be amended to have a location plan added to it. So 19 Church Street is an end of terrace property situated in the kind of historic Victorian area of Keswick, predominantly an area of residential mixed use, so a range of guest houses, residential properties, both used for holiday letting accommodation, but also permanent occupation, predominantly within that area. Zooming in a bit more, the red line plan here shows the property end of terraced at the junction between Ratcliffe Place and Leonard Street. A small lane, Myers Street, runs along the side of the property, providing access to additional properties in the area, but also a little rear yard to the rear of the property. Moving on to a couple of photos. Again, the application cites the furthest left in that terrace, 3 stories with a basement level. The attached property is used as a guest house, and then within the wider vicinity there are a range of uses, including guest house, holiday lets, and permanently occupied dwellings. Photo shows the little rear yard that's accessed along Myers Street that would be accompanying the building itself. Final plan shows the floor plans that would be proposed as part of the HMO. So to summarise the main issues, there is extant permission in place for the use of this property as either a holiday let, a guest house, or a permanently occupied dwelling. The application before us seeks permission to turn it into a house in multiple occupation. This use is in principle acceptable, supported by policy, and supported by policy 18 in particular, which seeks to find a new use for guest houses. Taking into account the site context and the extant permissions, I don't envisage there being any adverse impacts arising from the use as a HMO in terms of impacts on neighbouring dwellings, neighbouring businesses, or parking within the local area. I therefore recommend the application be approved subject to conditions outlined in the report and condition 3 as amended as outlined at the start of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Questions for Phil? Doug?
This isn't another mystery shopper question, but unlike Phil's, with HMOs, is there a specific type of change or development that needs to be done in order to conform with the description of an HMO, or is it just it's what the letters indicate, which is that you've got loads of people living there? Is there a specific design need to be fulfilled to become an HMO?
Ultimately, we would have to look at how that building has been occupied. Were the scenario to occur that we'd have a concern it's not being operated as a HMO, we would look at how that building is being occupied and operated essentially. But yeah, providing you meet that broader definition of HMO, so individuals occupying it that are not connected as a family member, then it would be in accordance with that permission.
And yeah, pick up right that for HMOs above a certain size, and 5 comes to mind, that there's a licensing requirements anyway, so the building would be subject to those into whatever requirements are set by the license as well.
Yeah, correct. So there should be an informative on the end of the decision notice that sets out that licensing regime requirement.
Anyone else? No, we don't have public speaking now. So who'd like to have that say, Jim?
Kick off. I think any housing back, we all know the issues we've got of finding housing for workers in the park, and particularly for people coming in at sort of the entry level. So I think this is a good proposal. I think potentially there's less parking worries than there would be from it saying being a holiday let, because people potentially won't have a car. They might just walk to work, whereas a holiday let, I think, with higher chance of being cars. So the parking issues certainly shouldn't get any worse. So overall, I'm happy with the proposal, and happy to go with the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, we'll take that as a proposal. Who is like to go next, Chris? Yeah,
Second the proposal.
that's fine. Anyone else before we go to vote? Okay, proposed by Jim Jackson, second by Chris. All those in favour? So unanimous. That's approved. So we are now on to number 5, and that's Parsonage Farm at Silecroft, and it's an amendment to the size and colour of the slurry tower. And this is here because it's connected with a member of the National Park staff, so it automatically goes to committee when that happens.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members might remember earlier this year an application which was approved for a slurry tower at Parsonage Farm. This is a non-material amendment to that application, and as stated, it's here because the applicant is related to a member of staff of the authority. So the application site, as I say, it's Parsonage Farm. It is just located set back from the A595 to the north-east of Silecroft. Just a quick view. So the proposed slurry tower, the location is not being amended from the original approval. It's in the same place as previously approved. And on the left here, you have what was approved in July of this year, and on the right, the amendment that is now proposed. So it's just reducing the diameter of the slurry tower and confirming, because it wasn't made clear within the original application, that the walls are going to be green rather than black. The proposals, given the distance from the highway and the surrounding landscape, the adjacent agricultural buildings, it's not considered that the amendments would be material, so this application is recommended for approval.
Any questions? Who'd like to start us off then? All fine, Jim?
It's smaller, it's green. I don't see a problem personally, so very happy to go with the recommendation.
Yeah, it seems an improvement, if anything. Doug?
Non-detrimental effect of the proposal here. I'd love to second it.
Anyone else? No. Okay, all in favour? So that's
approved.
Granted. Thank you, Kelsey. It's a quick one. So number 6, we're going to Laurel Cottage at Bowness. So Neil, are you coming to do this one? And this is a listed building as well, so we'll have a listed. Are you going to do them both together, Neil, or one after the other? Because there's a listed building consent.
The presentation is the same for both, but they're different issues, so I'll deal with each.
So we'll do the planning application first. That's number 6 on our
correct, yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Laurel Cottage is a Grade 2 listed building. It's an 18th century cottage, I think, and it's previously been used as a school a long time ago. Its current use is as a guest house. The current proposal is to change the use of the property to a drinking establishment, a bar. We previously had a very similar application earlier this year, which we refused. That was dealt with under delegated powers. The main difference between the current application and the previous one is that the police objections to the proposal have been withdrawn. As I said before, there's two applications here. The first is the planning application, which predominantly is to do with the change of use, and the other is some alterations to the listed building. So as you can see here, the application site is at the heart of Bowness. It's in the primary shopping centre, just at the junction between Kendall Road and Bradfeld Road. Just zooming in a little bit here, this shows it a little bit more clearly, and we'll see from the photographs where it is in relation to other properties. This is the property, so it's the property in white, quite attractive, as you can see, traditional 18th century cottage, previously been used as a school, grade 2 listed under a Westmoreland slate roof, I think. And this is just the side elevation showing the relationship to Wordsworth Court at the rear, which was also a school, I believe, and was converted into residential apartments some time ago. I believe that most of the apartments are currently used for holiday letting. There's no occupancy restriction on those properties. Existing elevations, well, you've just seen the photographs which show that probably better. Is what it says on the tin. There's very few external alterations proposed. We'll come back to this on the listed building consent application. Any changes are more to do with repair and maintenance, or either repair and maintenance of buildings, or of windows, or the replacement of those windows with something very similar, timber sliding sash. This is probably the only thing on the planning consent which needs our consent, planning application. And the proposal is to replace the existing wall treatment with railing, so a more formal approach than the sort of weather-worn limestone, which is currently the topping material. This is probably the crucial bit, so the change of use. The critical issues are, if we look at the current proposal, you can see on the ground floor plan at the extreme left there's a bar area which serves the guest house. That does have an existing license, existing liquor license. I think it's a 24-hour license, but that wouldn't apply to serving to the members of the public for 24 hours, but it is open to the public during licensing hours. You can see upstairs is all bedrooms, as you might expect with a guest house. The ground floor, along with the bar, there's also a dining area and a lounge. This is what's proposed. Again, we'll come back to the listed building side of it a little later. But as you can see, most of the internal walls are retained, so it would not be opened up as a big open space as some bars are. But it would have the whole of the site would be available as a drinking establishment. So all the bedrooms would be lost. There would be some retention for office space and storage space, but for the most part, it would be floor space for drinking, essentially. Just a few more details here. The physical changes are largely at the front of the building here. As you can see the existing limestone top on the walls, and that's actually AstroTurf on the front of the building. We'll see that in a little bit better. There's no changes proposed on the side elevation other than repair and maintenance, and this shows the front a little bit better. So there's very limited outdoor space, so we wouldn't expect large crowds of people congregating outside to have a drink. There's very little space there. The AstroTurf will be replaced with stone flags, slate flags. And as I said, the wall would be replaced by, well, there'd be railings on top of the wall rather than the limestone as it is at present. This is really more to do with the listed building thing, so I'll come back to this one and we'll concentrate on the main issue with the planning application. There are, I suppose, critical issues are the town council's objections to it, and this is why the application is before you, because their recommendation is that we refuse the application, and my recommendation that it should be approved. they're concerned about increased antisocial behaviour or even criminal behaviour within Bowness, and they link that directly to an excess of drinking establishments. As I said, the previous application, that view was supported by the police, but that objection has been withdrawn, as you'll see in the papers. In terms of the other element of that, setting aside any criminal or antisocial behaviour, there's issues about noise and disturbance, about whether that would affect nearby residents as well. My view is that this is in a prime town centre location. It's in the primary shopping centre of Bowness, as identified in the local plan. The government have identified certain uses as being appropriate for town centres, and drinking establishments, pubs, bars, etc. is one of those uses. I don't think there's anything in our policies or in national policies which would say that we perhaps take a moral view of whether we should be permitting such establishments. And given that there's nothing that I've identified in terms of the actual specific use of this specific building, which would lead me to believe that that will be excess either noise and disturbance or antisocial behaviour as a result of this application, that I can't see any good reason to recommend refusal, and the recommendation is for approval.
Thanks, Neil. Anyone want to ask Neil any questions? Jim?
Three questions, I think. You mentioned a number of times outside, and you referenced the front space outside. If we can just go to a picture that shows the rear space, was one which brought it up there, that one. Did you consider a condition to prevent the use of that rear space for drinking? I'm conscious that that's relatively close to the buildings behind, and I think in the report it was referenced that people at the front of the building making a noise would be sheltered by the building from imposing on those. But my worry is if they use that rear space, and I wondered if you considered a condition on that basis.
I hadn't, to be honest. I think it's probably something we could do because of the relationship with those properties to the rear. It doesn't look a very attractive space to me to have a drink, I have to say, so that's probably why I didn't consider that. But I don't see any problem with attaching an additional condition to say that there should be no use of that outdoor space for customers. No, would be all right, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Second question. The only mention is of drinking. There's no mention anywhere of food. I'm also conscious we don't know what the heating is. What I'm particularly interested in is any external vents or systems or air source heat pumps or air conditioning units that might be added to the outside of the building. Has been any indication of that?
There isn't any indication of that. I think because of the listed status of this building, we've got sort of extra control over any alterations to the exterior. So if they wanted to put any ventilation equipment or extraction equipment, then that would definitely require both planning and listed building consent.
Would it be worth putting an information condition on there just to make sure there's no misunderstandings?
We could certainly put an informative on to that effect, yes.
Thank you, Jim. Bill?
Yeah, this is a technical point. No, it's not a technical point. It's a local living there query. The map with the broken fence there is a green space just up to the right behind the row that was formerly the school property, and there's a footpath that runs down from that which Windermere Town Council uses as a park. It's a nice open green space. Is that a public footpath? And I'm trying to remember desperately whether this walkway, if it's not a public footpath, runs in front of the holiday lets, or whether it actually drops down and comes behind the cottage. Is there not a defined route, and it's just a way that has grown up?
The short answer is I don't know where precisely the public footpath runs. My view, I have addressed this application on the basis that there's a good chance that people will be walking to and fro that space, whether that's on a private basis to access the houses or if it's a public event. My view is that whether it's a public footpath or not, that's doesn't really affect my recommendation one way or the other. Yeah.
Chris?
Help me. This was refused last year, and the police have changed their mind on the fact because 3 other establishments have been approved in the meantime. Is that all in the last 3 years? Last year they've had 3 more drinks.
I understand. Yeah, there has been some recent approvals of licensed establishments without the need to apply for planning permission, because licensing and planning are 2 different things.
Yes.
So some of it was interesting. I mean, Mr. Jackson mentioned the issue about the serving food, and there's a bit of a grey line between when a restaurant or a cafe tips over into a drinking establishment, and they are considered different things in the planning acts, basically. So a drinking establishment is established as a sui generis use, so it's a use on its own, where it is a cafe or a restaurant, I think, falls in with a much larger use class C, I believe, yeah, which includes all sorts of town centre uses like shops and what have you. So some of those ones which have got a license may well be cafes, restaurants which want to increase the amount of alcohol they can serve. I haven't got any details of that, to be quite honest. My limited understanding is that there have been some discussions between the licensing officer at Westmoreland Furness Council, the applicant, and the police, the inspector responsible for this area. They appear to be satisfied that what is proposed is not likely to lead to significant impacts on the existing situation.
Any questions? No. So for this planning application, change of use is the main issue. What do you think? Jim?
Thank you, Mark, and thanks for the comprehensive report. It's an interesting discussion on pubs, bars and licences, but I'm not convinced it's one for us in our current policy, although there is a question, as we've discussed with other things, when's too much, because but I don't think personally, I'm not feeling we can make that decision here based on this application. What's in front of me to look at it is an important building. The changes proposed, I think, are improvements. I think it's very difficult in the middle of a town centre where you have so many other establishments to not agree to, what will become potentially a viable business contributing to the local economy. So I'm supportive of the application. I do think it would be useful for the protection of those cottages behind to have the condition to prevent the outside space at the back being used. And I do think it would be useful to make sure the applicant's totally aware that they can't add anything to the outside of the building through some sort of informative condition, avoid any just potential problems. But beyond that, I'm happy to agree with the officer's recommendation.
We'll take that as a proposal with the condition suggestions. So condition limiting the use of the rear space for, I suppose, drinking purposes. And then an authoritative saying that we'd need permission to put any vents or extraction units on the building. Anyone want to second or other comments? Andy?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, but so just thinking on what Jim said about that gap at the back, is the bit where them 2 cars parked part of that property too?
I was just thinking that
because that if you wouldn't make the back into somewhere to stand and drink, but if that wall continued round, there's quite a good triangle on there that you could stand, and you're still in front of them properties.
Yeah, Andrew was just reminding me, I should have remembered myself, that we have a red line plan there. So the application before you is not seeking the change of use of that land. The blue line indicates that land is in the ownership of the applicant. So as it stands, I don't think a permission for changing the property to a drinking establishment would encompass that land.
Yeah, so that car park, or if it is a car park, that little triangle is not included in this application.
Correct.
Yeah,
It's-
well, on them grounds, I would be happy to second your
Yeah.
proposal.
But just get that clear. It's not on the, obviously the blue line is they own that land, but they're not including the permission. So the permission granted will just be changed use within the red line. However, if they were to spread out into the blue line, what's our enforcement options? Do we need to put an informative on or something?
I don't think we can second guess what someone might do on land beyond the application site. It would, I think it would technically be a breach of planning control. If it were used for, well, there are certain permitted development rights, aren't there, for.
I think it's tricky. I think it's worth pointing out that that space is actually in the same sort of circumstance as the little lane down the back, which is it's not within the application site, but it is blue land, so you can control. It's a question when you want to, if you want to impose a planning condition, it's got to meet certain tests. One of those has got to be reasonable, and the test of reasonableness means that actually the applicant has the ability to do something about it. That's one of the components of reasonableness. So you can condition land that somebody owns because you can assume that they can control it, but you can't condition further. So yes, if you were concerned about how that land was being used, notwithstanding that you're not granting planning permission for it, then you would need to impose a condition. The question then becomes, what's that condition doing? Is it enforceable and is it reasonable? Because if somebody takes a drink and goes and stands on that land, it's not a material change of use of the land because it's just one person standing on land. Is that an issue with the condition? What if a person just goes and stands on the land and shouts? Is that a problem? It's becoming very difficult very quickly for me to draft the condition in a way that is reasonable and enforceable. Clearly, it's part of the drinking establishment premises, but it's not part of the premises because it's not part of the application.
If I may, I think my view would be it would be probably better to deal with it as a breach, in a planning breach, as it's not part of the application site. If it were used for something which is not currently approved for, we could deal with that as a breach.
But my
potential.
Sorry, we're having a discussion on the logistics of the condition. My concern with that is that you could have activity going on which give rise to the concerns that I'm hearing, but which was not a material change of use of the land. You know, it's a parking area or whatever it is.
Are you the applicant? Just this time, yeah.
Sorry, if you look at the far end of where the white car is, right at the very end, there are steps that lead up to the park. And that to us is a right of way to get to that, plus you go along the road as well, which takes you to the top. But that area there is for parking and deliveries to the back. Yeah. No, it's not very nice. It's not a nice area for that. Yeah. No, we've no plans to do that. Okay, thank you. Thanks. And any other questions? Okay.
Yeah. Condition if you want to enforce it, right? And the condition would be.
I think the question is, my first question is, what are the activity? Just to help me understand, what are the activities that members are concerned could be carried out on that land that you are looking for the planning system to regulate and prohibit, notwithstanding that it's not within the application site? That's the first question for me.
Yeah, so can I just explain? So it's in the report, it was identified, if I remember correctly, Neil.
Yeah.
That you said the noise would be sheltered because people would be at the front of the property, and I accept that. What I'm trying to avoid, and I'm happy if it's only an informative at this stage, is it because of pressure? It's nice, it's hot, and people spill out, the garden's too small. So over time, and it may not be this applicant, it may be someone who takes the building on in the future, decide because of pressure, I'm going to put some benches behind there, I'm going to pipe some music out there, and I'm conscious this could be open until 1 in the morning. Now, I accept, Andrew, that people may spill out there, people may choose to do that on occasion. What I'm trying to avoid is any sort of infrastructure or development that might encourage people to do that, be it putting out a few benches, putting out some narrow picnic tables, etc. Because it would be quite material to my thinking that we've gone from noisy area, yes, things going on, but actually there's a big building between me and where I'm trying to get to sleep, to actually the right outside my front door, and because it's hot and I'm in a vaulted ceiling, I've got the Velux window open. You know, it's quite an extreme position, and I just feel it would be helpful to be clear that that's a concern. However, we may choose to represent it at this point.
So the two threads there. There's the point that Neil made, which is if a material change of use of that land arises, that requires planning permission. So you would address that with an informative. Second thing is things that may not be a material change of use of land but are still bothering you. So would a condition prohibiting the siting placement of tables and chairs on that blue land be adequate?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Andy.
Would the simple condition not be that land is used for staff parking or deliveries and not for associated activities with the property? Is that because that's what the applicants currently said it's used for access to the back of the property?
My worry is if you say that an area of land can only be used specifically for something, that you end up with unforeseen and perverse outcomes. Somebody's walked their dog across it. That's in breach of planning control because that's not parking. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid, and that's what's quite difficult. And it's difficult because we're trying to regulate land which isn't within the application site, and therefore it's not part of that use. I'm comfortable with an informative about the point about a material change of use and a condition relating to no tables and chairs to be sited on the blue land for the avoidance of damage. I'm comfortable with that. I'm struggling a bit further, I think.
Who have we? Is that you signalling, Doug? Or
No.
Chris. Chris.
I think the applicant's made it clear there's no intention of using that triangle of land for nefarious purposes, but people are going to go outside and smoke or take a phone call or have an argument. You know, that can't be stopped. Really. It's not. Yeah. I don't think the condition is necessary.
Okay. Anyone else before we get into it? Right. So have we got a proposal? I've forgotten that. Yes, we have. Yes, from Jim. So it's with the condition, no benches and infrastructure, drinking infrastructure, I suppose, seating outside, and informative about vents, extraction units, and an informative about use of that space in the blue lined alleyway. So that's a proposal, and we're seconded by Andy. Anyone else? No. We'll go for the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Abstain?
Right, so that's 5 in favour.
So this is a listed building, so we have to do the listed building section. It obviously alters a few bits of the material structure of the
Yes,
building?
I think I've set out at 2.3 what the changes are. I'll just briefly go through those. So we've talked already about the removal of the stones on the boundary wall and replace it with railings. Remove that artificial grass, replace with slate flags. Replacement of an acrylic sign with a hardwood sign. And that will probably require a separate advertisement consent application, which we'll get in due course. External lighting to replace existing external lighting, replacement of some sash windows with double glazed timber sash windows, but still timber. Replacement of a low pitched roof on the rear elevation with this metal standing seam roof. That's an improvement again because the existing one is polycarbonate. Replacement timber door to the rear. And internally there are some changes, but the critical thing is the floor space, the layout of the building is going to remain the same. So we can recognise that historic use of the building. And as I said earlier, there's no intention to create a single open space within that listed building, which betrays the history and the character of that building. Just briefly, I'll just say you can see the internal part of the building here, which I think some of the walls surfaces have been stripped away. Prior to that, I was in this property several years ago, and there wasn't a lot of the original features really very prominent. So I think in some ways this will improve things with the revealing some of those internal works and original features. So that's a long-winded way of saying that I recommend that we approve the listed building consent. We don't think this is going to affect the character of the listed building harmfully, and if anything, it's likely to improve things.
Any questions about the listed building consent, Doug?
Thanks for that. Could you just give me a little more detail on the external lighting replacement? External lighting, please.
I haven't got the details to hand. I do know that our historic building advisor, I think who appeared previously, she has looked at this in some detail and she is happy with those proposals. There is lighting on the building already, and I think her view is that we'll probably have an improvement as a result of this application.
I mean, what I'm trying to forestall is upscale lighting so that it would be disingenuous of me to pretend to do a dark skies policy on this, but we should obviously ensure that there isn't anything too detrimental.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things there. I think we've got to be a little bit careful about dark sky considerations in a town centre location. That's one of the sort of areas where you would expect to see some commercial lighting, shall we say. It is right on the side of a busy main road as well with street lights. I think unless it's something exceptionally garish, which there isn't a proposal to do, we haven't got any, neon sort of signage or anything like that. I think this is acceptable in this particular location.
Maybe I should have used a stronger word than disingenuous then.
Yes.
If our lighting person is happy that the external lighting changes aren't going to alter, I think most of the parts of paragraph of 2.3 are improvements. I think those stones on the front wall are currently hideous. And anything gets rid of astroturf, I'm all for. I'd move the recommendation.
So we've got a proposal by Chris, seconded by anyone wish to second? Andy? All in favour? Sorry, go for the vote. All in favour? That's unanimous.
Unanimous approved.
I've only ever had me and my wife have only ever had 2 nights off in the last 12 years because we don't have parents. And one of the nights was in there. Well, sat out the front having a drink. So our next one is number 9. Kelsey is coming back to tell us about Pipistrel House and Back Barrow.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, this is an application for a new dwelling to the north of Pipistrel House in Backbarrow. The application is before committee as the recommendation to approve with conditions is contrary to the objections of Haverthwaite Parish Council. So the application site lies to the north of Backbarrow, which is a rural service centre, and it's adjacent to the Lakeside and Haverthwaite Railway. So just a closer view of the site. It's a parcel of the existing garden to the north of Pipistrel House. You can see the railway line to the west there, and then Finsthwaite Lane to the east, and then a row of terrace properties continuing north on the opposite side of Finsthwaite Lane. So some views of the application site. The left-hand photo is taken from Finsthwaite Lane looking northwest. The proposals are to demolish that existing single-storey timber garage and utilise that existing access and space, and then the land that rises beyond that for the new dwelling. So there's some hard standing there behind the garage at the moment, part of the garden area, and then the railway behind that, and then woodland beyond. And in the right-hand photo, it's taken from further along Finsthwaite Lane, this time looking south towards the application site. So the garage is on the right, and Pipistrel House is behind that. So the left-hand photo here is taken from the railway, again looking south back towards the application site and proposals for a dwelling, really where you can see the roof of the existing timber garage and the hard standing behind that, and then again Pipistrel House you can see in the background there. And then the right-hand photo is just a closer view of that site, this time looking north. So it's an elevated site, pretty much adjacent to the railway line, and then the highway to the east sits at a lower position, and then the terraced housing. Here, the left-hand photo is approximately taken from the position of the new house. So looking east towards that terrace housing, those elevations are those properties' principal elevations set behind fairly long gardens with ancillary domestic buildings in between. And then the right-hand photo is just to give a bit more of the site context. So further south along Finsthwaite Lane, you have Pipistrel House on the left. It's a 1.5-storey dwelling, not particularly traditional, but finished in render and slate. The garage there, which is to be removed, and that access along the lane. So these are the proposed elevations. Because of the rising site levels, it is a 3-storey dwelling with a car parking space and carport at ground level, and then the residential accommodation at the upper ground floor and first floor level. So the highway level is finished in stone. Planting has been added along the verge to try and soften that appearance. And then it's render and slate above that with a single-storey timber-clad flat roof extension just on the side there for the kitchen, and steps leading up from the parking space to that lower ground floor. The east elevation that you can see there, that's the elevation that will face towards Finsthwaite Lane, and the terrace housing on the opposite side of the road. The west elevation is the elevation that will face towards the railway, and the south elevation is the one facing towards Pipistrel House. So the floor plans, as I say, it's built over 3 floors, but the lower ground floor comprises the parking area and the access, which is being increased in size from the existing arrangement, and then a carport with parking for 1 car, and then kind of a utility space at that lower ground floor area. Onto the ground floor, it's a kind of general simple living arrangement. There's outdoor amenity space to the north and to the south. And then 2 bedrooms on the first floor. This is a proposed street scene, just to give you a little bit more context. So you can see Pipistrel House to the left there with a higher ridge line than the proposed dwelling. The glazing that has been highlighted there by the red line, that's just to show that an amendment during the application process, the level of glazing has been reduced and there's been some obscure glazing introduced. So the application is for a local occupancy dwelling, 2 bedrooms within Backbarrow, which is a rural service centre. So it's considered to be acceptable in principle under policy 02 and 15. Proposals are considered to be of an appropriate design and scale given the site context. And for the reasons outlined within the report, it's not considered that there'll be adverse effects on neighbour amenity. Concerns that have been raised about drainage and highway safety would be managed by the proposed conditions within the report. So it's therefore recommended that this application is approved with conditions.
Thank you, Kelsey. Any questions?
Thank you for the report. It talks about United Utilities sewer running under the site. I assume that's between the applicant and United Utilities, not something we should be considering.
It's quite a standard response we received from United Utilities that they're aware they have assets in the area, but they're not entirely sure where they are, and it's for the applicant to liaise with United Utilities and locate those.
Okay, and second question, there's reference to a footpath that may be obstructed. Is that a public footpath? In particular, is it our West Windermere Way or whatever, and would it likely be obstructed?
It's not a public footpath, no. It's just the line that you can see running north, adjacent to the dwelling, and then you can see the gate shown to the north of that plan, leads onto the railway line and then over the railway line to the woodland. But no, it's not a highway and it's not a public right of way.
Thank you.
Chris?
Paragraph 3.5 tells us the applicants are probably going to move into it from Pipistrel House, if this building's allowed. And then the Pipistrel House might move to be an Airbnb. Is that something we'd have another plan change of use for?
So that's only something that's been raised within the letter of representation. It's not something that's contained within the application. But as set out within the report, Pipistrel House is an unfettered dwelling. So how that is occupied in the future by future occupants isn't something that we can control under this application. It's outside the red line of this application, and it could be used as a holiday let regardless of whether we approve this application or not.
Questions? No. Anyone want to make any comments? Discussion? Proposal? Think it's okay, Jim?
I think Backbarrow well, having lived there, we need additional housing. We know that it's a good location in my mind for additional housing. I don't think this will look particularly out of keeping in the village either, and it is a shame we can't do anything about protecting the other house on the site, but appreciate we aren't able to do that. So on that basis, I'm very happy to propose we go with Kelsey's recommendation.
Yeah. Any alternative, Phil?
Happy to say.
Yeah. Any alternative? No. We'll go for the vote then. So proposal to grant as per officer's report. All in favour?
That's unanimously approved.
So we've got 2 more applications to go. Do you want to push through or do you want 5 minutes? Does anybody want a 5-minute break? Shall we go 2-minute break then? Got to wait for everybody. Okay, so we're back, and we're off to Lanehead at Coniston, and Jackie's come down and patiently waited for us to get around to it.
Thank you, Chair. The application is at Lanehead, Coniston, and it's for extensions and alterations to an outbuilding with works in the surrounding grounds, including a shed and a raised terrace in lieu of the existing ramp. The application is being reported to you because my recommendation for approval is contrary to the views of Coniston Parish Council. Lanehead is an existing residential education centre. My report is complete and there is nothing further to add to the report, so I'm just going to go through the slides for you. The site's located on the east side of Coniston Water, close to the head of the lake. It's more than 300 metres from the lake shore, from the building, the main building at Lanehead, to the lake shore, and it's approximately 950 metres to the shore at the Coniston Boating Centre on the west side of the lake. This is the block plan, and within the red line you can see the main house is the larger building towards the north of the site, and the annex is the smaller building to the south of the site. This aerial photograph gives a little bit more context. You can see the garden area. You can see other buildings that are scattered on this side of the lake and the lake shore. You've got the woodland to the east, which is on rising land above the site, and there's also scattered trees on the site and this side of the lake down to the lake shore. This is the view from the Lake Road travelling north. You've got the principal building on the site, which is the white rendered building. The annex building is the single-storey building on the left. At this side of the site, it's single-storey. On the other side of the site, going down towards the lake shore, it's two-storey in scale. So the next two photos are photos of the west elevation looking towards the lake shore. You've got the principal building there. You can see the bay window, and it's proposed to enlarge the path slightly in front of that window to get a cherry pick around for maintenance. You can see the large ramp coming down, and it's proposed to turn that into a mid-terrace area. And then this is the annex building, where it's proposed to raise the roof at this end and install new fenestration. So these are the existing and proposed lake elevations. You can see the raising of the roof of the annex is by approximately a metre, 1.2 metres. In the existing at the top, you can see the ramp coming down in green, and in the bottom you can see the mid-level terrace retaining the wall to the car parking area at the top level. And then that area in front of the bay window, there's a cellar access under there. They need to strengthen it and widen it marginally to actually get access around the building. So this is the view of the ramp. As you can see, metal railing, stone, which will be the facings on the terrace area proposed as well. You can see the lower area at the front of the annex building, where that's to be raised to match the existing roof that's there. So this is the existing layout plan. with the annex, the ramp, and the area in front of that bay window. And this is the proposed. So the terrace area is on the area of the ramp. You can see the path is widened slightly. There is the single-storey extension at the top of the annex building in this slide, and the raised roof at the bottom in this slide. So there are other elements also going on. So this is the roadside view of the annex building where the single-storey extension is proposed. In the left-hand photo, you can see there was something here previously, and when I checked in 2016, there was a a greenhouse here. In putting the extension there, is proposed to move the charger unit to the back of that hard standing area, and also just marginally increase that hard standing area to retain the 2 parking area spaces. So the extensions to the annex building would look like this. In the proposed, in the right hand one, you've got the single-storey extension on the right and the raised roof on the left. And then on the roadside elevation, the extent of the single-storey extension in the bottom left slide. This is the north elevation, which faces into the site and faces the principal building. And again, you can see the raised roof, the single-storey extension, and the terrace area. In addition to those works, I've already mentioned the small extension to the hard standing next to the single-storey extension to the annex. There's marginal enlargement of hard standing on the other side of the driveway just to ease parking. You've got the widened and resurfaced paths highlighted in red. And on this layout plan, you can see the location of the new shed to the left of the main building, and the shaded area are the paths that are to be resurfaced. So these are the details of the shed, sort of bog standard garden shed. Photo on the left to show where it goes in an area where they've also got their oil tank, and the layout plan to show that. Now, the application is before you today as Coniston Parish Council have objected to the proposals as being overdevelopment and in a sensitive area, and one that is very visible from both the lake and the village. This photo is taken from Coniston Boating Centre. The principal building there that's arrowed is the prominent feature on the site. The buildings at Lane Head, as I said, are set back from the lake shore by 300 metres, elevated position, intervening trees. The proposals do not affect the principal building on the site, and all the works proposed are subservient to that building. In my opinion, the works would hardly be noticeable from the lake or the opposite shore due to the distance and the intervening trees. My recommendation is therefore approval with conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Any questions from members? No. We shall go straight into it then. Members, what do you think? Do you think it's acceptable? Bill?
This is a facetious comment and not for public record, but you must have very good eyesight.
Yeah.
Yeah, we often get, we've got a blow up boat, we take the family, we go past there and you can see the big houses, however they are in their context of yes, I mean the council says it's overdevelopment. Is it such that it's harmful to the landscape and it would be unacceptable to grant planning permission for it? We'll go Doug first and then Jim.
To answer your specific question, which I would have mentioned later, but it is an obvious increase in size, whether it's detrimental enough to affect our decision, I don't think it is. However, of course, we would need to look into the fact that there is the constant discussion that we have formally and informally about cumulative effect. Whilst I don't think it would be adverse enough to refuse this application, I do feel that I would be looking at it differently were it a subsequent application after this increase in size. But I look forward to other members agreeing or disagreeing with that.
Jim.
Thank you for the report, Jackie. I recognise Coniston Council's concern about the views from the lake and its important consideration, but in this case, I think the amendments are small enough and it's distance enough from the lake not to material impact on that. So I'm very happy that we propose we go with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, anyone else? Yeah, Andy?
Yeah, I'd be happy to second the proposal. It is alterations, visible, hardly, cumulative impact, not really. So I'm happy to second the proposal with the officer's conditions.
Anything else? No. So proposed by James, seconded by Andy. All those in favour?
That's unanimously approved.
That's granted. And on to number 11. We've got Field North of Old Bark House, sorry, at Hawkshead Hill, and it's for a folly viewing station.
Late change of plan. The case officer is contacting me this morning. He's not feeling too well. So I think he said he'd try and get in, but he's not here. So I'm stepping in his place. Sorry, the application is for it's what's described as a folly or a viewing station building on agricultural land near Hawkshead Hill. This is the location. As I say, an open countryside location. You can zoom in a little bit here. So the red line, the red box shows the location of the building itself. And also it's been indicated on there where the previous building was. So there was a, again, whatever you want to call it, a summer house, a viewing station or whatever within the garden of that property. And the intention is to, that's currently been dismantled. So the intention, I think, is to use parts of that building, not all of it, but parts of that building, and resurrect it on the land shown in the red square. And the proposal is not from the occupants of the current where it was previously at Summerhill. It's from down the hill at Old Bark House, which is right at the bottom right corner or southeast corner of the blue line. So that's what it used to look like. That's within the garden of the existing house. So the intention is to resurrect something very similar to that. I think to use the existing glass and to place it in a different location. And that's what's proposed. As you can see, very similar to what was there previously, just in a different location. And you can see from those drawings the coloured glass, which makes up part of the building. Again, this shows it in context. So again, you can see, well, obviously the design of it, you can see on the top two photographs, or sorry, plans. There is a rendered model image, hopefully you can see that, which would show in context how the proposal would look in context. And that's viewed from the garden of Old Bark House, who are the applicants. And again, this just shows the view of the site from further down Hawkshead Hill near Old Bark House. Yeah, one more there. Sorry, that's a zoomed in or a larger image of what we're going to see. So that's a very good indication, I think, of what would happen here if this application were to be approved. We'd have a new building in the field looking pretty much exactly like that. The application's before you because the Hawkshead Parish Council have commented that they feel that the design and structure fits in with the surrounding area. There aren't any light considerations, and they don't think it would affect the highways. I would agree with that last point. I don't think it wouldn't affect the highways. There's no vehicle access proposed. Our view is that while viewing stations and follies, this sort of thing, are not unknown in the national park, and particularly around the Windermere area, there's a number of viewing stations. There's no indication that this would be on the site of one of those old historic viewing stations. I don't think, as far as I'm aware, there's no intention for it to be a public viewing station. It would just be a private thing for the occupants of Old Park House. It doesn't really satisfy any of the general exemptions we have, which sort of discourage development in the open countryside. There's no pressing need for it to be here or an essential need for it to be here. And our view is that location of a building like this is actually detrimental to the landscape rather than enhancing it. So the recommendation is for refusal for the reasons set out in your report.
Thanks, Neil. A folly or a shed. I mean, I'm pretty sure years ago, before the days of planning permission, people did put these sort of things on prominent sites to go and sit in and while the hours away. But nowadays we do have planning policies to do it. What do you think? Any questions for Neil about it? Open countryside, new building is not really used for agriculture. Jim?
With you on a number of those buildings and in the right location, I think they look absolutely great and make a nice addition for a house. I just don't feel it's appropriate within open countryside like that and breaking away from any other buildings. It quite significantly changes, in my mind, the feel of that field by putting that in there. So very happy to propose to go with the officer's recommendation.
I'll second that. This is pointless.
Anyone else? I think it's a shame, but yeah, they can't have it everywhere. So yeah. So we've got a proposal from James, seconded by Chris, that refuse the application as per officer's report. All those in favour?
That's unanimously refused.
Right, so just quickly whiz through the rest of the agenda, or spend time on it should you wish. One thing I'd like to say just before, at the start, when we mentioned apologies, Peter Walter, he has sent his apologies. I think we got confused in somewhere.
My apologies, I must not have noted them down.
Yeah, or Peter didn't, he sent for a different channel, who knows, but he has sent apologies, so he's not just not turned up. So we'll go on to delegated planning applications. Anything on there? Nope. Anything on enforcement, the compliance stuff? Any cases? Nope. Consultation responses to neighbouring authorities. Just that one there about a development consent correction order, wind farms and things. Any comments on that? No. Appeals. Had a couple of appeals lodged. Appeals decided. We've had a judicial review back. We've sort of discussed that, unless anyone wants to talk about it. Jim?
Thank you, Mark. I just wanted to make a point. I read the judicial review statement which came out in the papers in detail, and some of you may or may not have done that time, but I wasn't part of that decision. I think I was away somewhere that meeting, so I gave my apologies. So what I thought it brought home to me when I read that was the quality of the officer team, their advice and their guidance, and also the quality of the members around the table and the discussions that take place amongst the members. And on some very complex subjects, I thought the judge was very clear in his judgment and very supportive of our process, our team, and everything that goes on. And I just like to say huge thanks to everybody for that work. I think it's a really ringing endorsement of the time, effort and work both the officers and yourselves as members put in. So thank you all very much.
Yeah, I think the committee, you know, did its job. Well, it did. We did. Yeah. So that's us then. Tree preservation, or hang on, tree preservation orders. Got land at Belmont, Outsgate, and land at Maiden Castle at Watermillock. Got to just to note them. Just to note them. Right. Okay. That's us. Meeting over. We do have to discuss the site visit details, but we can shut the YouTube off. So we normally do site visits the Wednesday after this meeting, but technically anything's up for grabs. We could